Hi, I'm Tony Bowen and welcome to my Corn Country Rails. Today I'm going to talk to you about how I make my N-scale fences. It's a cheap way that I make them, but I have had a lot of people comment about, wow, where do you get your fences from? And well, it's not a kit, it's just things you can build from around the house and a few supplies from either Walmart or a fabric store. So stay tuned and I'll show you how I make my fences. All right, some of the common things I use when I make my fence are toothpicks. I'll take the toothpicks and I will just cut them on the chopper. I get 2 posts out of each toothpick. Nice thing is, since 80% of my scenery is styrofoam, I can use the sharp end and push it right down into the styrofoam. I leave my toothpicks up nice and high. That way when it comes time to painting them, I can paint them and then push them right down to the exact height that I need. So that's what I make my posts out of. When it comes to painting the posts, I've used anything from rail tie brown to weathered brown, a weathered gray, just about anything to kind of show your posts are not just that toothpick natural color. When it comes to stringing the posts, I've used the ProTech line. Really like this stuff. It's almost near impossible to break. The thing is, it's so thin though, you don't hardly see it. And so when I have my operators come over, they're like, oh, I see you've got your posts up on the railroad, but you don't have the line strung. And the unfortunate thing is I've taken the time and the patience and they're strung. It's just that this is so thin, you don't see it. So what I've used instead on some of my fence posts are just some common silver thread you could get at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, any fabric store, and I'll use that for lining or stringing for my fence posts. To hold the string, both the ProTech stuff and just the regular thread in place, just some common super glue works. I'll take a little bit and touch the post and the thread together, and that'll hold it in place real well. Another utensil that'll help when stringing is sometimes using a pair of tweezers to kind of wrap the string around the posts. And so I'll use those if your fingers are a little big like mine. You can use scissors, but I have found sometimes just using the little plastic nippers that you would use for plastic kits work really well for cutting the string. You can get in nice and close, and it's just like using toenail clippers. You can go right up to the string and get a nice, good, clean cut. When the string and your posts are all in, then you can always go back in time and use some weathering powders both on the line and on the post to give it kind of a distressed and weathered color. So these are some of the basic things I use when it comes to making my fences. So here's one example of an area where I've used the ProTech line. My fence posts there are in the back, and I'll use the basic ProTech line. It comes on a spool like that, and when it's on white you can see it really well, and I will just feed it around the post and wrap it. The unfortunate thing is, once it's on the post, and if you have dark scenery or something that is not real vibrant, the line essentially disappears. And so when my crews come over and say, you know, this is really nice, and you know, when are you going to string your fence posts? Well, you know, when I have some cloth or some paper behind it, and you can actually see the line that they're already strung, they don't look too bad. But as soon as that's gone, you lose the line. It just kind of blends in or disappears with the scenery. And I have that in one other section by my soybean field where I have some kind of light gray farm posts, and you know, it looks like just posts there, and the camera won't even pick up the line. So that's where sometimes going with silver thread or something that'll kind of show up gives that appearance that you have posts in place. So here's one other section on the railroad that I was talking about where I have some gray colored posts. They're all strung with line, but unless you have a piece of paper or that behind it, you just don't see the line. They just kind of disappear into the background. So the thought of possibly taking those lines off the posts and restringing them with thread has definitely crossed my mind as a possibility, because when you can't see the line and there's nothing for the light to reflect off of, it just basically looks like posts in the middle of the land just protruding out. So just something I may consider doing here in the future. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate in probably a time-lapse photography of how I'm going to string this line of posts. So essentially I'll start off with a loop already around the one post that I'm going to start at, and we'll fasten it and glue it, and then I just kind of start spinning around, and we'll go so far and dab a little super glue on the line, and then I'll just continue going. You'll also probably notice that I'm going to start pulling the phone poles out and just laying them to the side, just because I don't need to snag my hand or get the line caught up in those. And then once it's strung for the fence post, I'll put the phone posts right back in place. So hope you enjoy. All right, so what you just watched, I sped up in time lapse, but essentially it took me about 10 minutes to string this bottom line of posts. And the more you do, obviously, the faster it gets. It does not take long for the super glue to set up and dry. Usually I try to do all the bottom line at one time, unless I'm leaving openings for like a gate or that. Here it stops and kind of wraps around. Something else that's kind of a handy dandy thing is a lot of times I keep a T-pin handy, and so at the end I can glue the last post up but still keep some tension on the line with that T-pin kind of pushed into the scenery, holding that string nice and tight, and then I can come back and just clip off that excess and get ready to do the top string. And so that's what I'll do next. All right, now I'll let the top string along my fence posts dry. I'll cut off the excess at the ends, and then this fence line is done. Now I know a few people are going to say, wait a second, shouldn't most fences have like 3 big bars or rows of line? And I agree, they probably should. However, my fence line, you can either say that bottom string is buried in the grass, or I don't want my fence posts to be too out of scale to make them too tall. So right now they're kind of at the right height, but trying to feed 3 of those around there could be quite a challenge. So I'm okay with just going with the 2 lines on my fence posts at this point. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this short video on how I make my fences. Like I said, they're pretty cheap and inexpensive, with some household type items such as toothpicks, threads, a little super glue, and then paint and weathering powders. There's a lot of different fence products out there that you can buy commercially on that. But if you're looking at something that kind of represents that good barbed wire fence of the Midwest, I have found this seems to be the thing to go with. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I will say I've had a request. Somebody had asked me if I would be willing to do a how-to on how I do my soybean fields. And that is definitely something that I have kind of written on my list that I will look at doing in the future. As many of you know, I'm a school teacher, and it's August and I'm heading back to the classroom now. So the layout kind of gets pushed to the weekends and Friday nights, but I certainly live for those Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring breaks where I can get down here and work on the layout. So maybe how I do my soybean field certainly could be something I could put on my Thanksgiving how-to list and put out there on YouTube for you. So thank you again always for supporting my channel, subscribing, leaving your comments, and that it's always nice to hear from you. So take care, and I hope you have a great rest of the summer as we head into fall.